At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let the record show that all board members are present. So we will move to item B1. Dr. Croto.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we start our performances from our wonderful schools, and Dr. Asai will do the introductions for this.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. It is my pleasure to introduce Dysart Band, led by Miss Jordan Mooney.
Madam President, it is that time of year again. You have the marching bands going, and believe it or not, they start their season at home next Friday. So it is that time of year again. Thank you, Dysart High School.
Thank you. Sounds great, guys. All right, we will move on to item C1. Ms. Densmore?
This is the time for the public to comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on this agenda pursuant to ARS 38431.01H. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. In order to facilitate accomplishing the business of the district in a timely manner, a time limit of 3 minutes will be imposed for each individual or group addressing the board. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. And first, we have Estelle Morosky.
Members of the Dysart Governing Board, I'm Estelle Morosky. Attendance seems to be a major challenge in all of the schools in Dysart School District. What have you found to be the main reason for poor attendance? What are your plans to increase attendance? Have you considered home visitations by paid personnel each morning a student is not in school? Are the parents contacted at least by phone each and every morning their child is absent? Are responses documented in each student's file? Do you need to hire additional personnel for telephoning and follow-up? Are there not legal ramifications for frequent absences? Last Saturday at a local meeting, I asked State Superintendent Tom Horn for suggestions to improve school attendance. Mr. Horn mentioned better teachers as a solution. Mr. Horn stated children want to learn. Children are bored. I'm not certain I agree with his opinions, but they need to be considered. Children cannot learn if they are not in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Croto, can we have someone from Cabinet follow up?
Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure somebody calls her.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Stephanie Davis.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board and cabinet. I am Stephanie Davis. For the next few minutes, principal of El Mirage. I just want to say thank you to the El Mirage staff, parents, and community, hope I don't cry, for allowing me to lead them for the past 6 years. The average number of years a principal stays with a school is 4. I came into the school with the mindset that even though I was responsible for the entire building, I was only a guest. I always kept in mind that most of the teachers and families had been there long before I came and would be there long after I was gone. That meant I had to lead changes, but respect their experiences. I took my role of building leadership capacity very seriously. I was fortunate to have the same assistant principal, Rick Haney, by my side the entire time. We built a leadership team of all teachers, professionals, and classified staff that set high expectations for ourselves and our students. We all realized those expectations could be met if we did the right work. What we accomplished was beyond what I imagined, and I am so grateful for the many lessons that I learned from every single tiger. Never underestimate those tigers. These staff and students are resilient, tough, smart, and full of pride and heart, and they cannot be held back.
Thank you. Next, we have Haley Crawford.
Haley Crawford. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I actually have a couple of things to speak on. First, I was the previous 2022-2023 Dysart student representative. So I was here. I was a very familiar face at this stand. I spoke almost every single board meeting. I will actually be passing that role down to Braylee Ratliff and Valentina Herms for this upcoming term. So I will be secretary for the Dysart student leadership. And I would like to speak on that real quick. Dysart student leadership was one of the best experiences that I could have had throughout my high school, and I really got to get into that this summer because I was offered a great opportunity from my speaking role at this stand. I was able to speak at the Arizona State Capitol on topics that I have that are so near and dear to my heart because of this role, It was a scholarship that was paid in full, that I didn't have to go back and say, I owe you this, because they said, no, we owe you this. As the elders of this generation, we owe this to you as a younger student, that we can help you in your learning experience. And that was something that I really did get to do. From that experience, I was then flown out to Washington, D.C., to also speak on something that I'm very passionate about, and then I later formed a club about it. So just my whole summer and the whole experience and all of the student activism and the opportunities that I've had within the past year alone from my district, I cannot express how grateful I am for those opportunities, and just to continue to do that through Dysart Student Leadership. And I also wanted to let you know I plan on passing this down through talking to members of my school about it, presenting this at student council, presenting it here, that Patriot Leadership Academy Congress was one of the best things to happen to me. And I will be continuing to speak on that, because I'm still talking to the members in it, and I'm still communicating with them, and I'll be going to their national convention next year in Texas. So I just really want to say how grateful I am for the governing board, for the members of Dysart District for allowing me to do that, and for allowing me to have my club and just continue to pursue activism on this level. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Congratulations, Ms. Crawford. And Ms. Davis, thank you for your service to Dysart and for all of your time and effort. Thank you. Next, we will move on to item D1, Superintendent Update. Dr. Croto.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, cabinet guests. Great school year. We've started off with a great school year. We're in the 6th day of school was completed today, believe it or not. It's been a very smooth start. I would like to do a shout out to all the administrators, the teachers, support staff, students, parents, for getting this school year off to a great start. Everybody's worked extremely hard across the board in our district, and it shows on this smooth start. So thank you to everybody. It's been a great start, and 174 more days to go. So I'm sure they're going to be as smooth, and if not, greater. So we are very grateful for all those groups, and again, thank you for doing all that. On Monday, we had the opportunity to welcome HR put on a kind of a meet and greet for all our guest teachers, our substitutes in our district. And it was a whole room full at the Student Services Building. All our guest teachers came. We were able to speak to them, thank them, as they are a very, very, very valuable part of our team also. We do not function without our guest teachers filling in the spots when our teachers have to be absent. So it was a great job by HR doing that. It was fun to talk to them, and I think they enjoyed that whole day. So great job, and great job, and thank you to our subs. And our last piece is some great news. Excuse me. Over the summer, we put in, many of you know or maybe not know, the governor had a grant out there for teacher professional development grant. We did submit for that grant, and we have been awarded $522,000 in the professional development grant program. We received that. That grant focuses on to increase teacher and professional or paraprofessional aides retention rates, and to mitigate learning loss by providing targeted professional development to those groups for both teachers and paraprofessionals and school leaders. So we will be using that money. It has two goals. We're going to increase the effectiveness of our instructional leaders through coaching and feedback and those things, and also our professional learning communities, which we have set out to reboot and get going on this campus. We plan to partner with Solutions Tree. We wrote the grant for Solutions Tree, who puts on all the professional learnings, and then 3 of you went on to that. So we now have money for them to come in and coach and help us out and help drive these professional learning communities even further in our district. So we are very grateful. Dr. Longoria and a few others headed that project up, so she is responsible for putting those together, and I know a lot of people had a part, but she put it together in the end, and so thank you and everybody that helped with that, Dr. Longoria. We appreciate that very much. And with that, I believe that is all I have tonight.
Thank you. We will move on to item D2, Governing Board Update. Okay, well, I will just say welcome back, everybody. I hope we had a really great first week, and I just want to say thank you to all of our staff and students for giving us a really good start.
I just also want to welcome everyone back, but then thank all the administrators and Dr. Croto for allowing me to come into your schools last week on the first day. I know it was a hectic day, and I really appreciate you allowing the extra visitor. And it was always, we got great news, I think, in every campus we went to, that everything was moving smoothly, lots of smiling faces, and I know it's always hard to kick off the first of the year, and everybody did so beautifully, and again, appreciate the opportunity to stop by. Ms. Davis, I can't tell you how much of an inspiration you are to not only to me, and I'm sure many teachers in this district, but you honestly should feel like you're an inspiration to all teachers out there that are in title schools that have heard and sad, or people in general might buy into the mentality of kids can't learn. Their demographic, their family situation, whatever. There's just no way. There's too many. The odds are against them. You know, they're just never going to get to a certain level, and that is my biggest pet peeve, and the thing I've hated the most about when I hear about people's viewpoints of education and which children are teachable and moldable and which ones aren't. And title schools have always been my passion. I'm very passionate about raising that bar and recognizing the strength in all students, regardless of their background, regardless of where they're growing up. I believed in our staff that you get the right people in there with the right mindset and expertise, and they can help grow those kids and inspire those kids and realize their potential. Even if at home they don't get that inspiration from their particular family life, they go into a building and they know there's someone in there that believes in them, and you clearly are one of those administrators, and your staff in there obviously jumped on that bandwagon with you and grew that school and grew those kids. And you should, I mean, to be condescending, you should be so proud of yourself, and I'm sure you are, and you really are an inspiration, because there's no excuse for kids who can't move forward again based on their circumstances, and you've proved that. It's a tremendous loss to lose you. I'm hoping that, I mean, you obviously raised the bar. You've got a really hard, you set the bar pretty high, but again, it was that mentality also that you grew within that school, and those teachers and staff, I believe it's ingrained in them now because of you, and it's just going to continue to go up. But I just want to thank you so very much for not giving up on them and for putting everything you had into that school and the staff there, and you will truly be missed. But thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Okay. We will move on to item E1. I will move to approve consent agenda items as presented.
Second?
Motion made by Crystal Chapin, seconded by Christine Pritchard. Motion carries. We will move on to item G1. Dr. Croto.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we start our school CIP reports, so we are excited to have two of our schools to present. And to introduce our CIP reports is Dr. Asai.
Good evening again, Madam President, members of the board. It is my pleasure to present Ms. Jessica Felix, who is the proud principal of Marley Park, who is even sporting her school colors tonight.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board, Dr. Croto, and cabinet. I am Jessica Felix, the proud principal of Marley Park. I am excited to be here this evening and to share with you all of the wonderful things we are doing at Marley Park, our school goals, and how our work directly aligns to our district and governing board goals. I would like to begin this evening by looking at our 3-year data trends for ELA, math, and science. As you can see, we have had steady growth for the past 3 years, increasing proficiency in all areas. We have been excited about the new curriculum adoptions, and with the aligned and focused implementation, we are seeing our students reach higher levels of proficiency. We expect to see gains again this year with the new curriculum and the intentional rollout as the explicit and meaningful training occurs for all of our staff. A huge celebration is the growth we saw in our 5th and 8th grade science scores this past year, growing proficiency scores close to 20% in both 5th grade and 8th grade science. Our subgroup populations are always an important aspect of our data, and we are constantly identifying the needs of all of our students. Here you can see our data for our subpopulation of English language learners. In 2022, we saw a high rate of reclassification, moving students to the proficient level. In the past year, we did not see the same level of reclassification at the proficient level, but we did see great movement between levels, moving many of our students towards proficiency and seeing significant levels of growth in the intermediate level. Through the next few slides, we will highlight our Marley Park school goals. Our first goal area focuses on academics, and as we align this to the district goals of preparing all students with the knowledge and skills to achieve college and career success, we are always looking to grow our Mavericks. This year, we will be focusing on a 3% growth in ELA, math, and science, as well as the 5% gain on our DIBELS assessment for our kindergarten through 3rd grade students. Our action steps for this goal will focus on our work with professional learning communities and our collaborative teams working together to ensure alignment of teaching and learning. Through this, we will focus on what our students need, using data to make decisions and guide instruction. Our teams will receive explicit training on specific protocols to use within their collaborative teams, as well as differentiated professional development. When we support our teachers and their growth, they support our learners in their growth. Our second goal area encompasses safety and behavior expectations. For this goal, we are aiming to decrease the number of students who receive multiple office referrals. When we talk about this, we begin to dig into the data at the student level. When we have students that are seen for behavior interventions through the office referral process multiple times, we have to reflect and focus on the interventions that we are providing to these students. We have a behavior response to intervention team that includes members across campus from all stakeholder groups, and we come together regularly to dig into the data and brainstorm interventions and supports that our students may need. We look at the tiers of interventions and the people who are in place to support students and collaborate with teachers, families, and students to create a plan and action steps for student success. As we align this goal to academic success, as well as the district goal of providing a safe and secure environment for all, we know that our students have to be safe inside and outside of the classroom for learning to take place. As we work to reach this goal, we also recognize that celebrating students is key. We have around 1,100 students on campus each day, and we work hard to identify students who are following our STAR behavior expectations of being safe, targeting success, acting with integrity, and being respectful and responsible. We love celebrating them and recognizing all of our STAR students for their academic and behavior success. Our last goal ties together our student, staff, and community culture. Marley Park is a community school, and we want this to be reflected in everything that we do. Over the past years, our parent and teacher satisfaction has grown, and we want to continue being a positive place in our community and continue to reflect a satisfaction of 85% or higher. This year, we will continue to seek parent, teacher, and student feedback on events at Marley Park. We will also continue to welcome their feedback and ideas on how we can grow and improve for all of our students. Our goal is to be one of the top schools in the state, and we know that we will only get there with the support of everyone working together to keep our focus on students and the families that we serve. As you just heard, our everyday work is aligned and guided by our goals and some of the action steps behind each. This is a graphic representation that helps our staff to remain focused and aligned in everything that we do. This helps to guide us and remind us of our collective commitments to our individual goals, team goals, site goals, and district goals. We know that we are here for students, and when students grow and learn in a safe environment, we are making an impact. The first box talks about our collaborative teams and how they will plan and determine the needs of our Mavericks, while our leadership team works together to plan and determine the needs of our staff. Next, we talk about the teaching, the alignment, student engagement, and checks for understanding, while we also work hard to align our professional development for our staff members, including choice sessions, so each member of our staff gets what they need and are able to grow. We continuously look at collecting and analyzing data, where our students and staff are, what they need to be successful, and how we will adjust to the needs of our everyday students. We then use the data to intervene where needed at the individual level and at the team level with our staff and students. And the last box that we never forget is we love to celebrate at Marley Park. There are so many wonderful things that are happening, and we will continue to work hard to celebrate the big and small successes that we have each day. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Do we have any questions?
I was just going to comment. I think it was Marley Park when we were walking by classrooms. There was, I think it was, a kindergarten classroom was practicing how to walk in a line, like around. So you're already on that one goal that they say that like putting all that work into expectations and behaviors in the beginning is going to save you a lot of time in the long run. So that was great to see. And then I just wanted to comment that I love how reflective you guys are, not just in data as far as analyzing it and seeing, okay, where are the gaps, where can we grow, but just in your presentation referring to like staff development or your events that you hold, wanting to get that feedback on like, okay, how can we grow? How can we do things differently just all around, I think is wonderful. So congratulations for your growth too.
Thank you.
I just want to comment on the whole package. I mean, the presentation itself, like the actual PowerPoint, you've just really made this your own. Your outfit matches the PowerPoint. It's amazing. The level of detail that you've put into this, it's very impressive and very appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation will be from Dysart Middle School, Principal Monica Kernitz.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, members of Cabinet, and everybody here in the room. I'm Monica Krenitz, the principal at Dysart Middle School, and I'm here to present our CIP for the 23-24 school year. And I'm going to try this because last time it did the same thing to me, where it wouldn't quite go. Hey, okay. All right, so our data from last year is not what we were expecting, and we've made several changes on our campus to address our data and our needs. But one area for celebration that we have is our Azella scores and our proficiency ratings and movement there. We had nearly a quarter of our ELL students reclassify into the proficiency level, and then we made great movement from in between the levels. And we're really excited about that. Those gains in language acquisition for our students are going to translate into gains in ELA and overall academics for this school year. Our first goal for this year is by the end of the 23-24 school year that we will improve our AASA and science scores by 10% and decrease our students in the minimally proficient by 5% on both AASA and science. Even though the district is looking at other more incremental growth, we know that our students have a bit of ground to make up, so we went for the 10% goal. Our second goal for our year is that by May 2024, there will be a decrease in office referrals by 10%. Our baseline is 459 and our target is 414. That second goal is very similar to our goal from the previous year, and quite frankly, we knocked that goal out of the park. Our goal for last year was a 20% drop, and we had a nearly 40%. So really proud of the work that we did there. Our third goal is that by May of 2024, our staff and parent satisfaction will be reported by, I would recommend Dysart Middle, will reach 72%. Again, that's another incremental goal because we met our goal from the previous year, and we're, again, knocked that one out of the park. So we're really excited to see the continuation there. Our action plan and our plan to meet these 3 goals is, quite frankly, we looked at our data and we completely restructured our master schedule and streamlined content areas for teachers. With that became a complete PLC reorganization, which was fantastically timed with the PLC convention in Las Vegas. And we really reorganized those to facilitate more standards conversations and results-driven conversations. We're really looking at the state performance level descriptors and moving into student results and how that translates to kids. We will also be implementing instructional rounds this year, which is a program for teachers to observe each other and give specific feedback. The best way for teachers to learn to grow is to watch other master teachers, so we're facilitating that program. And we will also continue to monitor referral and academic data weekly. We've increased our parent and community family engagement activities on campus for this upcoming year. And we're also restructuring our successful house system from last year and increasing its campus presence. We're generating a lot of buzz right now about our house sorting. That is tomorrow. That's where we're going to sort our entire student body into their 4 houses. Staff is all on board and they already know what house they're in. And then kids and staff are, they're getting super excited about it, but we know that when they're excited about the programming at school that they perform better academically. And that's all. Any questions? Oh, sorry, additional supports, I apologize. Additional supports that we are a focus school, so we're really thankful to be working with a lot of layers at the district office in ed services. And so that's gonna be additional walkthroughs, targeted training. We've got specific training that we've already seen coming up based on needs that we've seen on our campus with our new to us teachers. And we'll also be getting additional training and feedback for our ESS and EL teachers in those areas as well. So really leaning on district supports there to help us and help all of our teachers grow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Quick question, just to make sure I'm looking at this correctly. On your data slide, the second one, in regard to intermediate for 21-22 to 22-23, 61.82% to 31.82%. What's the discrepancy there? Just to make sure I'm reading this correctly and understanding it. Was that a drop or was that?
We had students that actually jumped from they went from basic all the way up to proficient. So we had students in our 7th and 8th grade classes that actually jumped 2 grade levels because of the amazing work of some of our teachers. And the discrepancy was just, we also lost some students that they were in that 61% and they were not with us for the 22-23 school year.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
I just had some questions regarding the action plan. Can you, I think it was on the action plan. As far as, decreasing like the office referrals, how do you, what is your plan to do that?
Well, one of our big plans is we share that referral data out with teachers every week by grade level, and we share that with all of them. We actually incorporated that into our house system last year. It'll look a little bit different this year. And the way we did that was if a student, it's kind of hard to explain, but like if you got a referral out of 5th grade, then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all got points, if that makes sense. Okay. So we added it kind of into our competition, but really, truthfully, what it came down to was revisiting our discipline flow chart and our discipline matrix. And really cornering, like, is this a classroom management issue? Is this or is this really a discipline issue? And really working with teachers. Mr. Perla, my assistant principal last year, is fantastic about talking with students and talking through like choices and avenues. And really, I say he's truly cognitive coaching with students about making better decisions and choices going forward. We really, truly spent the time building relationships with the kids and the families. She's kind of moved into a new role, but Ernestina Roscoe on our campus also. She was our family outreach specialist last year. She knows every kid, every sibling, every cousin, grandma, everybody, and can give whole histories of families because she's been in the community for so long. She's an amazing resource. And then, of course, we've got a couple staff members that retired and then now volunteer with us or work as paras, but they were also teachers in the district and at the same school. So we've tapped into those longevity and that taproot relationship to be able to decrease those. And going forward, our biggest piece is visibility. We have people everywhere. So we're out in every hallway, we're out at every lunch. Come by first thing in the morning, you'll see me out in the driveway. And when it was 118 on the first day of school, I was out in the driveway. And building relationships with parents as they're driving by and with kids as we're waiting. It makes all of those little things add up to make big things.
Thank you. And you also mentioned the master schedule changes. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So in last year, we had a master schedule where our 7th and 8th grade teams taught both 7th and 8th grade. So if they were an ELA teacher, they taught 7th grade ELA and 8th grade ELA, and for all of the core areas. So we really looked at that and said, let's streamline so we can focus lesson planning and make sure that that's key, and that the conversations we can really dig into the standards and the scope and sequence for the one without spreading our teachers too thin. And so far it's really worked. That gave us the flexibility to restructure our PLCs by those content areas. So our grades 5 through 8 math are all meeting, and those conversations have been so deep right now because they can't talk about, little Johnny's late for every day, or we need to make sure we pick our kids up 2 minutes before lunch, or those conversations are gone. It's truly now, this is the standard, here's the performance level descriptor, here's where my kids were at last year. Our first PLC meeting, they were digging through AASA data from last year, combining that with the scope and sequence for this year, combining that with the standards for the first 2 weeks. And it was amazing. We were all, when we had all separated out from my leadership team and came back and debriefed afterwards, and we were just like, yes, this is where we're going, and it's good. Feels really good.
Good, thank you.
I have a question. On your action plan, there's 2 things that caught my eye. The first one was the house system. I wasn't real familiar with that. Can you go into a little bit more detail on that? And then you also talked about increased family engagement. How do you plan to get more parents involved?
They actually kind of go together, so absolutely. It's built off of the house system is built off of the Ron Clark Academy. We were very thankful to be able to send four of our teachers. This year I'm planning to send a couple more. But the premise of it is that every student, as soon as they walk on campus, has a community, has a place where they belong, because that's, for some students, they come to school and they don't necessarily feel like they fit in. So we have all grade levels separated into the 4 houses and the Ron Clark Academy technically has 8, but we decided to go with the main 4. And so tomorrow they will all find out what house they go into. And then they'll have, we're gonna use our advisory time that's already built into our bell schedule to do some of the community building. Every staff member is a part of a house. So the students will be able to build a relationship with a teacher who's not giving them a grade. And it could be somebody that they again see at, whether that's lunch duty, they might see them in the next year. But it's all grades. So our 5th grade students tomorrow, when they get their house, that will be their house for the remainder of their years at Dysart Middle School. And then the purpose of it is that they grow into leaders because it will become it's student-led and student-generated. So they're gonna be leading that. We then took the house system and because there's the 4 and there's the 4 quarters, we decided to make every quarter separated out by, or kind of sponsored by, I guess, by a specific house. So first quarter is our Issa Bindi house, and they are running they're gonna be leading the family, the fall festival that we had last year and then really improved it, but they're gonna add some Issa Bindi pieces to it, plus the Spirit Week, and then bringing parents in. I've already sat down and calendared other events on campus this year with my family outreach specialist and my interventionist specialist, just to make sure that we already have them all set up and ready to go, and then which ones were going to be tagged to a house. Second quarter is going to be Amistad, and we figured their house color is red, so we were going to do a spaghetti bingo dinner because that seemed to fit. The House of Altruismo, our house sponsor, our staff member leader for that one, was really, his heart was really like, I want to do academic showcase in the spring. Absolutely. If that is where your heart is, then you go for it. So anyway, so we just we did that, and then make sure we've already calendared out that we've got them all there, and then now it's just getting the parents on campus.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we're really excited. Tomorrow, if you guys are not busy at 2 o'clock, come on by. We'll be happy to have you. We'll give you a lanyard, and we'll give you a card. You can get a house yourself. It's really cute. In walking classrooms today, the students were asking me and Mr. Perlip, what house are you guys in? Well, we haven't told you guys yet. We'll find out tomorrow. I want to be in Revere. Okay, why? They're super jazzed, but we just keep telling them, you don't get to pick your house. The house picks you. So we're really excited about it. And then, of course, that has really energized our staff. And again, I think which is just helping those conversations back in PLCs again. Seeing the teachers, the camaraderie between them has been even stronger this year. So really excited.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Quick question, sorry. I wasn't sure if Ms. Grant was going to go. The advisory hour, you said advisory hour. Is it really an hour?
No, advisory period. It's
Thank you.
15 minutes every day, and then we did increase a little bit on Mondays so that we had a little bit of extra time to do just that. But that's every middle school. All 4 middle schools are running on the same bell schedule this year.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. Sorry,
I needed. No, you're good.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item G2. Dr. Croto.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, to continue in our academic focus, which is our main goal in the district, I've asked Dr. Asai to do a presentation on our academic focus for the year. So Dr. Asai.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, again. It is my pleasure to present on our academic focus. Our academic focus goals for educational services and really our indicators are built off of the board's goals, Dr. Croto's goals, and then we produce the indicators really. The indicators revolve around increasing test scores, mandatory data chats with principals, adding supports at focus schools, and our PLC process. We believe that raising student achievement requires fidelity to process and also solid measurements. The processes we'll be talking about tonight include the implementation of the PLC process, really our rebooting because we've tried it before and not seen the gains we needed, ensuring fidelity to the resources in scope and sequence, focusing on solid Tier 1 instruction, adhering to benchmarks and using them to really identify deficits and opportunities to curriculum compact, and our measurements we're using align to our state labeling system. Our measurements of success are the AASA, AZSI, and ACT. That's what we're measured on. That's what we're going to judge our process on. To review the PLC process, it revolves around 4 questions. What is it we want students to know? Really the what, the standards. How will we know they know it, the how. What will we do for those that have it, extension, which in the past has been overlooked a lot. And what will we do for those that don't? To this end, the board sent all of our directors and our principals and 3 of our board members to the PLC conference in Vegas. We believed that as we embark in our rebooting of the PLC process, that we really needed to ensure that we were all on the same page, that we defined success the same way. In the past, I think for PLC process, it's really been focused on what the adults in the system are doing, and we've redefined that as we can't have a really, as we tier our PLCs, red, yellow, and green, we can't have a green PLC without that group producing results for students. I can be doing all the actions, but if I have the best intent without the impact, it really doesn't matter. So as we've done this, Ms. Harchin and Ms. Noble designed with educational services a continuum for our PLCs and what success looks like. This was used by our site leaders to really classify all their PLCs And the PLCs went and did some self-reflection themselves, saying, this is where we are. No, nobody's all red really or all yellow, but here we are in different areas, and here's our goals for the year. Here's how we're going to move over so we can do the PLC process better. In addition, all of our sites have worked with either Mr. Musi or myself to design a PLC rollout process for the year with goals and what their staff's going to do and how they're going to have accountability for that. In addition, our district office staff is going out on Mondays to see what's being done with PLCs and to look at the feedback that principals are giving to their teachers, because we know that feedback for students matters, but feedback for adults and their system matters as well. The next part of our process is adhering to a solid scope and sequence. We build our scope and sequences off the Arizona State standards. We look and build our assessments off that. And then we use our resources that we've adopted through our curriculum adoption process. Our district probably has some of the most detailed scope and sequences in the state. This is a sample of the front-facing page. So it defines the unit, it describes it, it gives a timeline, and you don't have to be on every day. You can be 3 or 4 days in between, but you shouldn't be 2 or 3 weeks behind, because we do have transfers in our district, and if a kid goes from Rancho to El Mirage, they should be learning the same thing at the same time, so we don't lose ground. It also defines our major standards and our minor standards, and it also provides the teachers with the assessment. So that enables teachers to really plan backwards. We had work done on this summer through summer workshop that we've talked about. Over 80% of our staff actually had input in going back and really examining our scope and sequence. We looked at our assessment data from last year, and we said, where did we really hit it out of the park, and where did we not? And we were able to make revisions to the curriculum, revisions to the assessment to better align them to the state test. Our next process type is our teaching and learning and what it means to have great teaching and learning in Dysart. Last year, you heard a couple schools mention that they were concerned about Tier 1. We are not going to have that this year. We are all solid on what Tier 1 looks like. It's defined by the Dysart Instructional Protocol. We've trained our teachers on it. We've trained our administrators on it. To that end, as our TLS program, our Teaching and Learning Specialist program, was revamped, this is their primary coaching tool. I do want to emphasize that it's not a checklist. If I see the first 5 minutes of class, I'm not going to get all the checks on the sheet. And the sheet isn't about getting all the checks. This is for coaching. I always start by coaching and looking at the objective. Does the objective align to the standard at the correct level? Because if I'm not teaching the right thing at the right level, it doesn't matter how pretty the lesson is. The rest doesn't matter because I'm not learning the right thing at the level of rigor I need to. From there, we coach. We look for checks for understanding, which is in the bottom right-hand corner. Do our teachers know when kids leave the classroom daily, who gets it and who doesn't? Because if I'm working on a standard and I don't know 50% of my kids know it on Friday, it's too late. I've wasted the 4 days in between. I need to know daily what my kids know. And then we have active engagement and academic conversations and the other 2 quadrants which overlap. The beauty of this is every educator in Dysart can tell you what solid Tier 1 instruction looks like because that's defined. And the reason that's so important, and you hear me get very passionate when I talk about this part, is the research shows that there's more discrepancy classroom to classroom than school to school, traditionally. Because different teachers, while you can bring your own art to this, there's some scientific things that go into teaching to produce student achievement, and we want to make sure all teachers have that. The next type of the process is making sure we are also adhering to test prep. We teach the standards which are aligned to the test. And sometimes people say, you're teaching to the test? Yes, we are. We want our kids to be successful on state testing. When I took my superintendent's exam, I wanted to be successful on that, as I want my daughter to one day be successful on her nursing exam, which she will study for. So we teach to the test. We look at our standards, we look at the test. We have benchmark predictors. Our benchmark predictors, we should not have been surprised where our AASA scores were this year. Our benchmark predictors for reading were within 10%. We estimated as a district 36% of our kids would pass, 46 actually did, but we do have time before the last benchmark in AASA, and our scores should go up because we know what they're low in, and we have time to intervene. Our math, we did not do such a good job of intervening in. Our benchmarks predicted 41% of our kids would pass, and 41% of our kids passed. What this does tell us, though, is it's more important than ever, because our benchmarks are so tight, that our teachers and our leaders lead teachers and really being able to dissect those when we get them the times of the year that we do and say, what do our kids still not get? Is our curriculum going to address that? If not, we need to go map that in again. Which groups of kids don't get it so we can pull small groups? Also, taking the test. Tests are different now than when we took them. Back in the day, I had a number 2 pencil. It had to be nicely sharpened, and I filled in one answer for each question. Now kids take the test on the computer. They have multiple answers sometimes. They have drag and drop. They have to highlight things. So if I never practice with the test format, kids might not know how to do that. In addition, it's changed the way that questions are asked. We have a standard RL2 that asks, it has to do with summary and writing a summary. It doesn't say writing a summary, it says summarize. In the past, when I taught English, I had kids write the summary. I thought I kicked it out of the park. Or hit it out of the park. I'm sorry, I'm not a sports person. I thought I hit it out of the park. Obviously, I didn't either. Today, that same question asks, it'll ask, which of these is the best summary? It'll ask which sentence completes the summary. What detail best supports the summary? So you can see if I just teach it the way I used to by having kids write a summary, they could be able to do that. I would think they're proficient, but it's not the way they're tested. So that's why these things are important to us and part of our academic plan for success in students showing proficiency. Those are our process goals to hit our 3% gains. The next is focusing on our focus schools. When Dysart Middle presented, they are one of our focus schools. We identified 6 focus schools as having less than 40% of students proficient in reading and less than 30% of students proficient in math, or having a new admin team altogether. What these schools do is they intensively, and I mean intense, I was at all the focus schools this week. My team was too. I felt like I was walking in and I either saw Amy, Ashley, or Dana back there walking out, meeting with principals. We asked them to file focus plans. The first goal of their focus plan is always solid Tier 1 instruction and how they're going to roll that Dysart protocol out, how they're going to hold teachers accountable, how they're going to do PD, and PD that's differentiated. Because when I'm doing rounds with the instructional protocol, if Craig has a great objective every time, he doesn't need to set in professional development and listen to me tell him how to write an objective. So we're using our data, which is collected too at the district level, so we can also see if we need to infuse some of those practices within our curriculum. The second goal is up to the schools. They have goals such as improving systems, improvement in subgroup populations. You saw some of our schools classified a higher amount of EL, some didn't. Our ESS population, some schools chose to focus there because we are in TSI, Targeted School Improvement, for ESS students at some schools. Our focus schools include Ashton, Dysart Middle, Riverview, Thompson Ranch, West Point, and Valley Vista. Our final linchpin in this is increasing instructional leadership, because we know that next to the teacher really makes the most impact on student learning. Research supports that leadership is the second. The principal has the second highest influence on student achievement. So we thought that we really needed to go back and train our leaders. You've already heard us talk about training and getting a common vision for what a great PLC is and how that can move. That was at our PLC conference in Vegas. I also didn't put up there, we did a lot of, dug into that a lot also at our back to school with our administrators. We have revamped and overhauled our teaching and learning specialist program. They're meeting more frequently in the district. The part I think that's going to really make a difference is in the morning, we talk about best instructional practice and how to coach. They practice those coaching conversations, but in the afternoon, we're actually going out in about groups of 3 or 4 on campuses with teachers who have volunteered to let them practice their skills in their classroom. So it'll be on the job. It's a learning by doing, where you go into the classroom, you observe, somebody goes in to replace the teacher for about 10 minutes. The teacher comes out in the hall, conferences with the coach, and goes back in. It's a high-yield strategy in coaching, and I believe as an instructional coach, if you can do in-and-out coaching like that you can coach anything. So it's going to be really great to have this opportunity to practice and grow our teaching and learning specialist, because eventually we want them to be our assistant principals and our principals. We want to create a pipeline of growing our own. I didn't add this up here, but we also have a master teacher program. There are 1 or 2 teachers from each school who applied. We're designated master teachers, and we are using them for model classrooms. I was at Ashton Ranch yesterday. Jessica Brill, who was a great teacher at Valley Vista, she's now at Ashton Ranch, opens her class to her colleagues to come in and observe and give her feedback on her best practice. So she has to be on, that's a lot of pressure because those master teachers have to be on all day, every day, because you never know who's walking in. And then they use that to debrief as a method of best practice. So hopefully our master teachers become our TLS become our APs and our principals. And last, we continue training for teachers in addition to sites working on the elements of the Dysart instructional protocol and PLCs. We have gifted cadres for our gifted teachers, our gifted training for teachers who are learning how to really raise the level for their gifted students. We have a group called the Literacy Leadership Team, which is a combination effort by our language arts specialist and our social studies specialist to really get kids reading more and writing about using those primary sources as they write. It's had great success. And then our math leadership team, who continues to study our new math curriculum, how to really implement it with fidelity and best practice, and they serve as role models to their peers. I added this because one of the things that we've done under Dr. Croto's leadership, and one of the words I keep hearing around the district, is focus. That our leaders and our teachers feel that we're more focused than we ever have been. Kara Sayre included this for her staff. It's her goals, it's her CIP goals that talk about goal 1 in academics, goal 2 in referrals, goal 3 with satisfaction. But she aligned it nicely to their mission, vision, collaborative commitment, norms that are part of that PLC process. And underneath, you can see many of the different things we've talked about, from feedback with the Dysart instructional protocol to the PLC rollout to RTI, and how that really all fits to promote those goals, which are aligned to not only Dr. Croto's goals, but the board's goals. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sai. Thank you for this presentation. I feel like the past couple of years, we've been really focused on our academics. We want to see our students learning. We want to get proficient on grade level as much as we can, because when students get behind, teachers not only are responsible for teaching that grade level content, but they got to back up before they can get to grade level. And then it's kind of a domino effect. So I love the focus on the academics, but not just, okay, yeah, we're focusing on it. This is the nitty gritty. This is how we're focusing. This is, us studying and seeing, okay, we need to do something different. Here's where we're going to start. So thank you for that. Can you maybe just, in like a couple of sentences, just briefly highlight again exactly how the PLC process is going to drive our academic success?
In a couple of sentences, I feel that's a challenge for me. I will
You can have
I will
5.
try my best, Madam President. With the PLC process, it's focused on looking at in that unit at what are those standards. I feel in the past we've kind of given it a glance and not gone past the semicolon. Most of my English standards are deeper level, and before the semicolon is kind of at a DOK 1 or 2, and then it goes on to a 3, but we only teach at the 2. So really defining the standards and doing a task analysis of what does it take, what are the prerequisites to reach that standard, and breaking that down. So the teachers are engaged in that conversation during common preps, preferably. At elementary, it's really easy to get common preps. At high school, we try diligently to get common 9th grade prep, common 10th grade. Unfortunately, when we can't find enough teachers, sometimes teachers pick up 6/5, and that process becomes harder. We are able to do it on our Monday early release, which embeds time during the day. So as long as time's embedded during the day at some point for those PLCs or at some time, teachers have that opportunity. So it's defining, really unwrapping that standard, but then 2, saying how will we know they know it that day? Not in creating those common formative assessments or every 2 days, because for too long we've waited till the end of the unit, which in English can be 3 or 4 weeks. So really defining how will we know that standard in real time? Because like you said, if they fall behind, it's so much harder to make up. But if I know on day 2 I need to pull a small group to make that up, I have that real-time data. So creating those common formative assessments is part of that process.
Madam President, I can help her with the 1 or 2 sentences.
Of course you can.
Simply put, if you want a soundbite for the professional learning community process, it's a focus on student learning and not teaching. Just because we're teaching kids doesn't mean they're learning. So we need to measure what they're learning and adjust accordingly. So it is a focus on student learning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've, being in education, I've been in PLCs. And I feel like for the most part, it's been this sort of vague idea, you get together, okay, what do we, and it's kind of just, okay, yeah, everyone hits the surface of it, but just taking a deep dive into it. And it doesn't have to take hours and hours. It's more of a focused conversation like you were talking about.
I've seen some very effective PLCs that work in about 45 minutes, to go through it. I also think being able to, across the district, we do pull all of our music teachers together, or all of our singletons with CTE. So I think sometimes when we've tried to force it at campuses in the past, it does make it harder if you don't have content. There are ways to do vertical PLCs across things, but I think we've really tried to look at how can we create maybe multiple meaningful PLCs, but it's, like you said, it's the quality of the conversation.
Thank you. And I like the fact that you highlight it can be done in 45 minutes. It doesn't have to take oodles and oodles. You don't have to stay for 2 hours after the bell just to PLC correctly.
Correct.
Thank you. And then also I want to just focus this, I'd like to highlight the focus on our TLS and our coaching, because coaching is one of the greatest experiences, but it could also be viewed as an expendable position for people who don't understand education, people who don't understand what a coach does, why it's important. It's not somebody who just goes in and says, okay, you're fine, and then move on. So for maybe somebody who doesn't understand the process, can you maybe in 10 sentences?
I'm sure I'll do 10 sentences, and then Dr. Croto can finish and summarize it in one.
Okay.
So our TLS focus primarily on our 0 to 3 year teachers, because we know lots of teachers will leave the profession in 5 years. So we want to retain those people. They start with training them in the basics from new educator orientation, how to access, we do so much on computers now that can be hard. How do I use Infinite Campus? How do I use Illuminate? How do I use my different testing platforms? Then they go into the first 2 weeks, we focus solely on management. Because I know if I don't have management, the rest doesn't matter, because I have kids running all over the classroom or that aren't listening. Sometimes that's really easy. Sometimes a coach goes in and says, Craig, you need a quiet signal. And the teacher does it, it's successful. Other coach will start to engage in a cycle of planning, going in and observing and debriefing with the teacher. Another thing a coach does is really focus on transfer of skill. Professional development research will show us that about 10% of skill is transferred without someone there to support it. So we invest heavily in training teachers in different methods and professional development, and then that coach is there to watch the transfer of skill and provide feedback or reflection depending on the level of skill of the teacher. If my teacher is really skilled, I can say, what do you think, could have made it better? The teacher will come, usually my 0 to 3 year teacher. You kind of have to dig down and say, okay, do you think maybe this or this? And then you go back and you try it again, and the coach is there again. And the coach really, I believe, I believe others too, impacts the efficacy of our teachers. And we know that teacher efficacy, the belief that I can do something, that I can persevere, that I can get it done, is one of the highest influences on student academic success. Dr. Croto, would you like to summarize?
Sure.
You only get 2.
I can do in 7 words. I would say solid teaching practices create successful learning opportunities. And that's proven in the research, that the more solid they are in their practices, the more kids are going to learn.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative, and it really just reemphasizes for me how much of a focus you guys are putting on academics, which has always been very important for me. I also liked that you had the piece on Tier 1, and that you have, you said that you're going to use that, I don't want to call it a cheat sheet. What's the real name of it?
Dysart Instructional Protocol.
The TLSs are going to be using that going into the classrooms?
The TLS admin also uses it so there's 2 ways this is going to be used. The TLS goes in and they script by hand, and then they go out and they kind of go over their check boxes, because it's kind of a hierarchy of how I coach. It should never be handed to the teacher like, here, you got 3 out of 5 checks. So TLS will use this every visit when they go in.
wanted to just clarify, though, that we're going to be monitoring for Tier 1. Because I know you said initially to go back to Tier 1, but we are, right? We're just going to we're going to assume
This is our
people know.
solid Tier 1. This is our way of making sure it's implemented in the classroom, yes.
Okay, and I appreciate that because we learned in June that there are schools that say they struggle school-wide with Tier 1 instruction, which was still alarming. I still can't unhear that. So I'm glad that we're getting plans in place to be able to make sure that's happening.
And that's one of the reasons, Member Pritchard, when you saw the focus schools, all of their goal is solid Tier 1, revolving around education on the DIP, and using it in those schools to really have a rollout plan for it.
Okay. And I will say, between this presentation and just what I've seen of this team, there really seems to be a very strong emphasis on academics, being in the schools, doing all the monitoring, and I appreciate it, and I really want it. I really hope this not motivation, what am I looking for? Sorry, my brain is, momentum continues. Because, and now as you and I have known each other a long time, my thing is you can be nice and not effective. Okay, now I've got a new one. You can thank Dr. Croto, because I wrote it down. Just because we're teaching kids doesn't mean they're learning. That's profound. That is so true, because what I'll say is you can go in and do these spot checks and be in the classroom and look and say, okay, yep, they've got a PLC scheduled, they're doing professional development Mondays, they're doing all these things. Just because you're checking the box doesn't mean it's effective, doesn't mean kids are learning. So it's really important for me, and I'm really inspired by this team because, again, you guys really seem to be driven by being in schools and making sure things are happening. But please continue that and go in and measure. I mean, I don't want to just hear, these are the interventions we're using, and then we don't find out until the end of the year that kids didn't move the way we wanted, they didn't grow as much as we needed them to, or like you had said with your English scenario, that, that's a long time to wait to see whether or not kids get it. So I guess for me, my takeaway with all this all sounds good, but just having ways that we're doing frequent check-ins to make sure that what we think is happening is really effective and meaningful and kids are learning.
Well, and I think that's part of the, one of the real benefits of Dr. Croto's leadership is he has high expectations for us as assistant superintendents, as principals, for our teachers, but also the demand that we support schools in doing that. And also we have great leaders and great relationships who then they don't see it as an obtrusive process. But hey, I had a principal go, "I'm so glad you're here to walk." I'm like, "Really?" No, really, I am. So I think our leaders appreciate the support because we have a great group of site leaders who want to be better tomorrow than today, who are, they look at their data. Even our top performing school, she goes, "That's not where I wanted to be." And that they want to produce great results for our kids, for our community. And they realize that working together, especially in the same direction, that we all have this laser-like focus this year, that we're going to get there a heck of a lot faster than trying to do different things all over the board.
And I think building that collaborative team as well is good, because then that way no one should feel uncomfortable or hesitant to come forward and say, I need help, I'm struggling, or my interventions aren't working, and coming to district staff if they need to and saying, I need that help now. Better to know now and fix it and feel comfortable asking for it than, again, end of the year, scores come out and then it's too late. So thank you for everything you're all doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just want to say how much I appreciate this presentation and all the information that you're providing. I know it was mentioned in here with the slide for Luke, but also in one of the CIPs, speaking to the attendance piece of it in reducing discipline referrals. And while that's, hopefully effective, that effort, what are we doing for the actual attendance to school? What steps are we taking to improve that?
Each of our sites is really looking at that. We have the standard letters, but we know the standard letters don't always work. So lots of them have programs that are promoting attendance that we're really trying to get out. And I'll cite Luke again because we just talked about it the other day. She has classrooms actually competing against each other to see who gets the best attendance. Okay. Making sure we do call home. I have one school that's exploring the idea of house visits. We have to iron out some things there because we also, you never want to put your people in jeopardy. Sure. And not that would ever intentionally happen, but right. Just the legalities and logistics of that. So we have looked at that. We have reached out to, I believe, one of our schools was talking about reaching out and working with their SRO
Okay.
to see how they can support us.
Good.
Maricopa County has a cuts program that we used to use. However, they're only available once a year now. So that's not really an option for us anymore.
When you say it's only available once a year, what does that mean? Like one time per student or?
No, that they'll come and do hearings for us once a year. I believe
Okay.
that's the capacity they have.
Gotcha.
So that used to be a good deterrent, but it's not something we have an option for anymore. So we need to continue to explore options.
Okay.
Because sometimes even as a parent, when I took the kids through high school, just knowing they had to go to an attendance hearing was helpful.
Yeah.
Madam President, Member Densmore, we also, this is a major part of our data chats that we've had with every single principal so far. We talk about attendance, we talk about chronic absences. We're able to run lists of kids. We have administrators using their team identifying kids with chronic absences, sending letters about chronic absences, aligning it to proficiency to show the parents how proficiency lines up with chronic absences, and reaching out to explain that you need to be present in order to learn. So it is a very huge piece. It's a huge focus for us. Again, we talk about it with every principal. Every principal's targeting it. We've sent out announcements district-wide, but ever since the pandemic, it's okay not to go to school, or it's okay not to do that. And I take this time to urge the community, we need people, you need people to demand that their kids are in school. We will help them learn. We will get them to where they need to be successful, but they need to be in our campuses. So that is a strong focus for us, and we will continue to do that throughout the year.
Thank you. And you know, as a parent of a former student with a chronic health condition, are we still requiring those chronic health documents to be submitted if there is a true
Yes, we do.
medical issue?
Yes, we do.
Okay, that would excuse them from the chronic absences. But outside of that, though, we do have the ability to suspend or discipline in other ways?
Madam President, Member Densmore, we do look at that. The suspending piece obviously is putting them out of school even more.
I know.
So we do have those things with discipline. We talk at the high school level about losing credits in class after a certain amount. So they do have attendance contracts that go out, and after a certain amount of absences, that the students will lose credit in those classes. So we start to explain to them that in order to pass high school, you have to accumulate a number of credits. So if you're losing credits, you're going to be in high school a very long time. And so they're starting to have those conversations. Grade school, we're talking about retention too. We've talked with principals about if they're not here and they're not proficient at grade level, we may need to talk about bringing them for a retention, that they haven't learned what they need to learn in that grade level and they need to do it again.
We've also, when we went through data chats with principals too, another thing we asked them to explore with their teachers is having the teachers call home. Is lots of times if it's a, if it's a person I don't know calling home, it's not as impactful. I know when I was in the classroom, if my kids were gone for 2 days, I made the phone call personally. If you have 160 kids, it's a little bit harder sometimes, depending on how many absences you have. But I do believe that personal touch also makes a difference when I call and say, hey, I noticed Caitlin was gone today.
Thank you.
So to piggyback off the absence or attendance issue, when I was in high school, our school district had a truant officer. And if you didn't show up to school, we had a couple of truant officers that would roll up in their nice truant officer cop car, and you come to the door, hey, you're going to school. Is there any possibility of adding something like that in the future?
Madam President, that is the CUTS program that's put on by Maricopa County. And there are so many schools in Maricopa County that's what Dr. Asai was referring to. They can come and service our district for one time an entire year. Obviously, that does not help deter absences for one time. I have worked with the police chiefs in both cities to try to come up with a program that will allow us to use some officers. As Dr. Asai said, there's concerns about sending our staff to the doors. So we need always make sure our staff is safe. although phone calls don't work. So we are in discussions and talking about that on how we can maybe utilize some officers at some time, knowing that we can't utilize them every day because they have a job to do too. You know, their job's to keep the city safe and respond to calls. So they're not employees of the district to go out and chase absent kids. But they are very excited and willing to talk through the program and see what we can do and maybe utilize SROs. We're looking at every avenue we can, and just getting the word out that we need to be in school.
Thank you. And I do want to say thank you to El Mirage PD and Surprise PD and MCSO for those sites. I just cannot say thank you enough. I know your resources are spread thin, but the fact that you're willing to share your officers to keep our students safe and our staff too means a lot.
Madam President, they are amazing to work with. So I second that comment, and they're very good to work with. We are very fortunate as a district to have those partnerships.
I have a question for you, Dr. Sy. You made a comment through our speech, just kidding, that, just kidding, that you were talking about having the teachers not wait till the end of the unit to discuss and see if they've got it. You mentioned something about actually going over it before, making sure that they're understanding it before the end of the unit. How are they going to do that? Are they going to test them, give them a pre-test?
So it would normally, what I was referring to when I said that, pre-testing is also a good way to do it, and then curriculum compacting. I don't know if we're quite there yet. The part I do think we really have the ability to do working with our PLCs is the district makes the unit test. So teachers already have the unit test, but dividing that up and saying, what are the big chunks? So if I have a unit that's on addition, subtraction, and multiplication, I would say I'm going to teach the part of addition for 3 days, and then I'm going to give a quiz. And I'm going to see who gets it and who doesn't. Within that, I should divide it in different ways. I might have some kids that tell me 3 plus 5 is 15 because they accidentally multiplied, but it makes sense. And some kids are just like, it's 2. So there's a difference in mistake. I just missed it. I had a problem with the process, which is an easy cleanup, maybe in bell work the next day, versus I need to pull a small group and reteach. Then I would teach the next section on subtraction. I would go ahead and quiz on that. I might decide to build my common formative assessment on addition that I taught and subtraction, so I could get another read on how my kids that didn't do so well the first time did on that. And then I might quiz on multiplication the next time, or all 3, and then give my unit test. So there should be checkpoints along the way. I kind of, my husband says I get lost a lot when I drive, so I kind of liken it to the mile markers as I'm going to California. If I see Indio, I know I'm on the right path, and if I see other places, which might have happened once or twice, I know that I'm not. So those common formative assessments really serve as our checkpoints along the way. And they're really what we should be basing our small group off of, or our bell work cleanup the next day.
Okay, because I think that's a fantastic idea if the teachers are doing that. Because I know, I'm going to age myself, 30 years ago when I was in school, we would have stuff like that in the classrooms where the teacher would go over the lesson and, and ask whoever has the answer and throw candy. Oh, you got it right, here's a piece of candy. Or we would line up to the board, and the first one to write the answer, got something. I mean, it was just stuff like that that made the kids more interactive, and they remembered a lot more.
And that's even to increase, that's kind of that on-the-spot check. I would call it the on-the-spot check. We do it a lot with whiteboards. I actually used to take my math teachers, as a coach, I would take my math teachers into a dance classroom. Dance teachers give some of the most amazing feedback, as do coaches in the world. They're like, no, point your toe, do this, and they can watch 5 different things. And if we actually were able to give feedback like that, what that you're talking about in the moment, that is the best timely and specific feedback. It has one of the highest yields. I think it's like a 0.84, according to Hattie. Anything above a 0.4 is really good. So it's one of the highest yield practices that we can do to increase student achievement.
All right, thank you. Next, we will move on to item G3. Dr. Croto.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, we are presenting to you a dress code presentation. I believe was asked for back in May, April or May, that we would like a dress code presentation. And so we are fulfilling that tonight. And Mr. Musey is going to present to you some information on our dress code.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Croto. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Croto. We have an opportunity here to change gears and talk about a different topic, and dress code. And this is really, for us, I believe, an opportunity to look at, when we talk dress code, the whys behind why you have it in place. We can look at the current guidelines and practices that we're utilizing and policies. We get a chance to assess where we are, and this is an opportunity to look at areas that need to be improved and also any updates that we need to make within those practices. So I want to start with talking a little bit about some of the reasons why and establish what are the purposes of a dress code. Number one, when we look at that list, we see it establishes a professional atmosphere for learning. This gives a chance to say what it should look like when we talk about our campuses and wanting to see that atmosphere on a campus of when students come to school. The second one you'll see listed there, students should dress in a manner that takes into consideration that educational environment, the safety, health, and the welfare of oneself and others. And I want to emphasize that area of safety. Safety to themselves could be the types of things that they could have on or that could be a problem involving whatever's happening at the school, but also I would keep in mind that when you have a tight dress code, safety is also, I would speak as an administrator, it makes it very easy for me to know who belongs on my campus and who does not. So there is elements to that safety can be a huge element to when there's a dress code in place. And then the third one you see is there that attire that detracts from the learning environment, and that could be anything that could be affecting the educational atmosphere or could cause an educational disruption. So this next few slides, you're going to see actual information that comes from the Student and Parent Handbook. These are contained on pages 26 through 28 of our handbook, and I'm going to work through these just so you can get an idea of what's contained on those pages. Okay, and so I'll work my way down the list of each of these. So we talk minimum guidelines. Shouldn't be seeing pajamas at school. Undergarments should be worn. We shouldn't see undergarments worn as the regular clothes. Undergarments is actually defined in the handbook. Any reference to gangs, anything that we could say that's, and a lot of times too, that one, especially with the help of our SROs and local police departments, can define that for us. So we do education on that and work through those safety procedures, but it is defined in there that way. The piece you see on there of the next bullet, not include defamatory writing, obscene language, symbols, images, reference to tobaccos, drugs, alcohol. That's actually in reference to an Arizona state statute, that one. And then the next one, the same way, must not display anything that would, if you're displaying anything on your clothes that could be an illegal, any type of illegal property or anything that they have on them that you cannot possess at school. Hoods are not to be worn at class, or it could be that a staff member is asking you to take it off when you're in the classroom. And then clothing that should be adequately covering the full range of movement without the undergarment showing. I'll continue. The accessories and personal items. Okay, these are things that they may have that are more physical in nature, that could be a safety concern, that could cause anything to themselves or others. You could see things like, and some of them might not be a safety, but could be involved in the safety measurement of a student or what they're doing to learn in the room. It's like, for example, sunglasses being worn inside. Sometimes there's medical situations, and we understand that, but we're talking in general here. Spiked jewelry, chains, long belts, anything that could be used in the wrong way. Masks can be worn, but they're not to be worn in any way. If they're for a health purpose, that's fine, but not to be done as a way to cover their entire face. So I would use examples like Halloween time and things like that, where if a kid had an entire cover, we'll see that, and we have to provide instructions to students around that time of year. But at any time, you can't wear anything that would be distracting, that we didn't know who you are. The accessory can be confiscated by the administration or the staff member, and the site administrators can determine if hats or headgear are allowed. So that one is reiterated under that particular item. Then you get into some of the specifics about clothing here. So you're going to see these three, as I run through these next three slides, are very much defined of the shirts, the pants, and then the shoes. Shirts and tops. So shirts should not include spaghetti straps, halter, backless, strapless, off-the-shoulder tops, meaning no straps as well, cutting down the far end of the back or under the arms, front of exposure, as it's read there. So they do define what that is in there, and that's a specific item in our handbook. Second one there, exposing any part of the midriff, undergarments when sitting, and we know that we talk about midriff as far as the short shirts, and then obviously must not be see-through, ripped, or torn. I do want to point out on the top one too, when we say that, we're also talking about that could be the type of tank top that could be worn that has a very large undercut on it as well. Pants, shorts, bottoms. This next one is anything that could be exposing their backside or when they're sitting or standing, extending of a reasonable length. That second one there, any undergarment that could be allowing them to be not be able to function in the proper way of being able to sit, and it's exposing their undergarments. And then finally, it talks about spandex in the form of types of pants or bottoms must not be see-through. So these are pieces that I reiterate, these are listed currently in the handbook, okay? And then finally, the shoes. We say that shoes need to be worn. I think you would see that, pretty much anywhere we talk about shoes needing to be worn to school. Closed shoes, toe shoes for physical education is listed as well. So a kid is not coming into PE trying to perform in sandals, obviously because they get hurt. And then slippers should not be worn to school, and I think that kind of aligns to the pajama one. So that's the way it's listed. What could be some of those violations, the consequences to these? These are the three things that we have identified as the ways to deal with this. Depending on those particular types of violations, a lot of times during the beginning of a school year, it would be an education time and then addressing it. So you might ask the student to maybe change into clothing that could be provided by the school. Sometimes that's something could be provided, or changing if they have clothes to change into. Turning that inappropriate clothing inside out has been done, and also having clothing brought to the school if that's approved by the administration. So if they could be bringing it in, having it delivered. But again, you wouldn't want to do that on a daily basis. So that's why the consequence piece to it is listed in there, that can be given by the administration if the dress code violation continues. So there is avenues to do that as a due process piece. So really getting into the nuts and bolts of this, assessing where we are. And I think that's why this item came before us is an opportunity to talk about that. And so as we launched into this year, we felt it was important to establish more communication on the importance of dress code. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't still need to entertain what needs to be maybe adjusted or updated within the handbook. So that could be a conversation, and I'll get to that in a second. But really, starting this year, it was important, and we started off from a district level, making sure that communication was sent out to parents. Then we provided due process information to the schools that they could utilize. Schools then were going into classrooms. They have an opportunity to review it with their students, being done either in a homeroom or a third hour in a high school or things like that, where you get a chance to review what the practice is with the student. Messages being sent home as well from a local campus. The other part is that you'll see that third bullet, and some of these are things that need to then continue with what kind of training and working with local administrators we need to do to how to enforce and build a dress code culture. And when we say that, it's a positive culture. We want students to feel comfortable at school and knowing that it's a place that it's a learning environment that they're coming to, as well, but that they know that that they know what the expectations are. And obviously that involves our parents and the community in that aspect and in the long run. Assessing the number of violations on each campus regularly. So that's something that we are going to be paying attention to now, is what's happening with dress code, and when do you need to address it. Right now it's hot. So a lot of times you're seeing right now that the kids, kids will wear jackets and then the jackets come off because they're wearing something that maybe underneath that's not appropriate, so they can shift in between that. But a lot of times in the winter you see them more covered up. So you'll see that change, and when we get into the spring, we see the adjustment again. And that's pretty obvious, but that opportunity for us to assess where we're at continuously throughout the year, what we're doing and how we're reminding on our campuses and working with our parents and community. But I think most important is our last bullet there is we feel that also is in this process we need to look at how can we form a committee to begin reviewing and updating this dress code policy. I've been working closely with Kevin Cachat in the Student Services Office. I've asked him to be working closely with the campuses in the initial part of the year. We've all been doing that as assessing as from our end what we've seen on campuses, going out there and visiting the schools early on. But we feel like at this point now too is that we can do these things, but we still need to come back to and look at forming a committee and looking at how we can review the current dress code practices, what's in the handbook, providing updates, and where we want to go from here. So if we feel like there needs to be updates to it, if we also feel like we need to talk about how we are actually enforcing and making sure it happens on our campuses as well. So the start was to really go after it hard, and make sure that we're communicating it out, and then we can continue that conversation as far as moving that dress code. So I'm going to stop there, and I'll be open to questions and what you'd like to discuss regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Musi. I feel like it's important to have this conversation. I think we've gotten very lax with our enforcement of dress code. And for me as a teacher, when I had kids who came to me at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I dress code them, parents were not happy. Well, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Why are you just saying something now? Well, I just saw your kid now. When my kids had 5 other teachers through that day and nobody's dress coded them. And it's a clear, very clear. The shorts keep getting shorter. The tops keep getting skimpier. And even for gentlemen too. Trends are changing for gentlemen's clothing, and some things are inappropriate also. So I think it's important to address those. And for our male employees who don't want to address a female, it's super easy to find your female buddy and say, hey, I got so-and-so in my first hour, can you come dress code her? Or for the lady, say, hey, I got so-and-so, can you come dress code them? Or talk to your administrators, because I feel like this is an issue. And if we let kids get away with just some of the small things, they're going to think they can get away with the bigger things. And just to continue that focus on behavior and learning, I think it's important to make sure that we go back to actually looking at kids and dress coding them. But I also think it's a good idea to have a conversation about some other things that are in the dress code. I mean, as a college student, didn't we all wear pajamas to campus at some point? If a kid's wearing PJ pants, that's more appropriate than a student who's wearing a halter top. So I think it might warrant a conversation.
How we got to this point, because it's really gotten like way out of control, where it's not even a matter of way back in the day, and I understand changing the times, this might not be a thing anymore, but way back in the day it was where if you were going to wear leggings, those were considered undergarments, which I never agreed with because they're not undergarments. But the rule was you can't wear leggings unless you're going to wear a top that covers your bottom. Now that's out the window, which, whatever. I mean, again, that might be something, things change, I get that. My big thing is it's not a matter of like, oh, your shirt doesn't come all the way down. It's like half your shirt's gone. And these young ladies are just walking on these campuses with very little material on their top, and how no one sees that, as like Ms. Chiffin's point. How do we get to the point to where these kids are able to go their whole day or even through the front gates and nobody stops them? And I don't even necessarily buy the, well, male teachers may not want to comment on female students, and female students or teachers may not want to comment on male students. But I was standing with Dr. Croto, and it was just a simple, don't wear that shirt anymore, okay? And it was like, he didn't have to say exactly what the issue was. She knew what the issue was. And way back in the day as well, it used to be one particular school in our district used to have clothes that said dress coded on the top. And people said, oh, that humiliates kids. We can't do that. Some of these outfits, they should be humiliated walking out their front door wearing those. So, having a shirt that says dress coded on it, I don't know if we go back to that, if that's legal, I have no idea. But I'll tell you what, it was pretty effective because they didn't like going back to class with that on their shirt. But the point is, whatever we do, I don't think it's going to have to be like a conversation or we need to move toward it. Some of these things just have to stop right away. Whether it's like you call the parent and they either come right then or the kid does the rest of their work in the office for the day. I don't know what the answer is, but it's distracting for some kids, to be sitting next to a student who is half clothed or dressed inappropriately in some other way. I don't know how we got here, but that's our fault that we allowed it to get to this point, just as much as it is the kids and the parents' fault for allowing their child to leave the house. And maybe some parents don't know what their kid's leaving. I get that. Parents have to be at work super early, and they may have no idea. Someone purchases the clothing, but weekends are different than school. I also understand that. But all I know is we send the handbook out. We used to have parents sign off on that they read it. But it's our fault that we keep allowing it to happen because we're not doing anything to stop it, or a lot of our buildings aren't. And we need to figure out how, what we're going to do now. I even want to know in a superintendent update in the coming weeks, what we've done to address it moving forward. I don't want to wait until a dress code committee comes together and we figure it out because it's just out of hand. And once we get there, I think we need to have a clear understanding of how we're not going to get back to this point again, because it's we can't get back here. It's very bad. I'm not shocked by a lot of things, but some of the things that I've been seeing on some of these students, not okay for school. Not okay, I think, anytime you're out in public, but not okay for school when you can't have other students who might be distracted by their classmate. And I agree with Ms. Sheffin, too. I'd rather some kid come to school in pajamas, then at least they're covered, than coming to school with half of a shirt on.
Yes, Madam President, Board Member Pritchard. The first aspect I wanted to state to that, because I know you said how we've gotten to where we are. I would always say that comes with expectations, and the expectations that you establish and where you want those to go at the beginning of the year. So I don't believe that in starting, and I don't know how far back I could go to this point. I've asked, some of that piece, and I've looked at that and talked to within cabinet on this and other administrators. What have we been sending out prior to this? What did we do to start the year of communication so that parents know what the expectation is before school starts? What did you do in the beginning of the year to review the policy and practice in the classrooms with students and on the campus so that kids know? And then how did you go about actually holding them accountable as you went forward? A big part of this, when you say setting expectations, is that, and this is something that I believe strongly in, and I know the administrators do as well, is that it's not going to be any good if your staff is not helping to enforce it. And I know that was mentioned earlier. How did a kid get through the entire day? Your staff has to own the expectations of the campus just as much as the administration. So that's what we've started this year off on, is saying that that's an important piece. You're right. Now what happens after that? So you begin that way, and much of that, when I say conversations with students could be on the first day when they show up or whatever, and you're making them make the change there, and maybe there's not a consequence to it or anything else, but there is a due process to that piece. And there are schools that do hand out shirts. Sometimes they're PE shirts or other things like that. I don't know about the actual putting that parameter, but we have that ability. Those are elements where you're saying that that's not acceptable to wear that on the campus. So, you know, I don't want to pin it to anything. Maybe there was in the last few years that element of how schools had shut down and then started, and maybe there was something that happened within there that, you know, that things just didn't keep going in that way of saying that there's an expectation. But we can set an expectation. That's the way we've started this year. And Dr. Cotto was very clear with us on that we will make sure that we make that message clear to our parents and our families and our students. We went over that. It's part of our getting back all of our parent acknowledgement forms. It is an expectation. It's not an option. And then it's up to us to look at what's happening with that and to assess it and to come back to that and see what's happening. So when we're out on campuses, we're making the visits, having the conversations with our principals and our assistant principals. What are we doing to ensure that that's happening on the campus?
One other thing really quick that I noticed when I read through it, and I don't know if this is paraphrased or if it's actually out of the handbook. On the page about the accessories and personal items, the last bullet side, administrators can determine if hats or headgear are allowed. Students shall remove their hat or headgear when requested to do so by staff. Does that mean then that when the Pledge of Allegiance or the National Anthem is on, they're not required to remove their hats unless it is a religious headpiece or something like that?
Madam President, Board Member Pritchard, the hat is still expected, you know, during that kind of, when you're talking about the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, that is something that is an expectation at the school that they would remove their hat. That, you know, so when you get into that piece of the hat, the hood, and everything else, that would be an expectation. It's not defined there. We don't have it defined in the handbook that way.
It just, when you say they can determine if it's allowed or not, and then they shall remove it if they're requested. It doesn't really give.
This was written primarily for while the instruction is going on in the classroom, when kids have it on and you can't see what they're, you know, the fact that they could be asleep or other things like that, or a kid that pulls their hood, or the fact that there's, you know, the element of a kid could be distracted doing something else by hiding behind that. But it was written for the instructional side of things. That's how that piece was written.
I see. Maybe it's just something to consider
Absolutely.
when your committee gets together, is to firm that language up as it pertains to National Anthem or Pledge, because as it reads, if someone refused to take their hat off, you wouldn't be able to cite them under the dress code and the handbook, because it really doesn't specify. It says it's up to the administrator. Just something to think about.
Absolutely.
For when we get up to that point, but because I would hope that would be, you know, non-negotiable.
Thank you.
Just looking through this as far as the current dress code standards, this is specific to students, correct?
Yes.
And do we have standards for staff as well
Yes, we do.
in writing?
Yes, I would.
And how do they compare?
I would refer over to Dr. Poling for that piece, but we did have, just as a quick, board member Desmore, we did have conversation just as an aspect of how does that, we did have just some casual conversation. Dr. Poling could respond to that much better than I can.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam President, Member Densmore and Board, yes, those are sent out annually, and it's part of the package in the MOU. It comes from a memo from the superintendent, and they're very similar to the student expectations. I don't have the verbiage with me right now, but they're very similar.
Okay, thank you. And then with some of these standards, with the, you know, the spaghetti straps, the short shorts, midriffs, how is it that we at least in writing hold our students to these standards when many of our district purchased athletic uniforms do not even come close to these standards? Just something to think about as we go through that.
Yes, Madam President, Board Member Densmore, I'm looking at some of the pieces that you're talking about, and I know that when you start to define, like maybe specifically within there, because they talk about what that looks like, but right now I'm thinking of the aspect of a tank top. There is language in here that attempts to define, and it could be more clearly defined, what the cut might be and what that should be like, or the size of a strap. There has been large and very broad and strict interpretation to that, but I think we could define that within there to show what's acceptable, because the athletic uniform is designed to be an appropriate type of uniform within that performance and what they're doing. So then we would say, is that appropriate on the campus if they were wearing something similar? I don't believe, and I would say that'd be a great conversation. I don't believe that the writings of what you see here, I think this is talking to the extreme of what you might see like within, because we say like a kid is in the swim team, we know they're wearing, right? So we know that the uniform fits.
I don't think people are swimming on any of our campuses anyway.
But they're correct, but at any event are representing that as well. So I would say, though, that competition of what the school approves for a uniform. So I don't think that was the intention, but I think we could definitely say, make language to say that, hey, uniforms that are provided appropriate to the sport that are approved, those obviously fit those guidelines. This is for the learning environment here.
Right. But I think even like maybe on a Spirit Day or, I don't know, Homecoming Friday where everyone is in their uniforms during the school day.
Sure.
I don't think we're going to have any of our swimmers in their Speedos.
Correct.
But we would have a cheer or pom that's maybe potentially exposing their midriff and their rear end hanging out during class. That there is definite potential. I've seen it. So I'm just putting that out there for thoughts on this going forward. But I also just want to mention, I don't think that we're holding some of our staff members to the same standards in looking at this. And I know that, as we say in the stores out there, it's so hard to find Bermuda, length shorts for girls and, and not getting the booty shorts, right? Well, it's the same for women, too. I mean, grown women, it's so hard to find a pair of pants without holes in it, a shirt that actually covers your waist. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's like we're having to shop in the granny section, But so I get it for our parents out there. I get it for our staff out there. It's difficult because society's changing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to modify our standards to society. Those are my thoughts.
I just have a comment too. I know that everybody's, wants everybody fully clothed and they're okay with pajamas. I'm not okay with pajamas. I think our students should set their standards a lot higher than coming to school in pajamas. These children are getting ready for the future. They should learn to dress for the future. That's just my only opinion. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd just like to close this out by saying we have some work to do on this dress code that is apparent. We have started that process, and it's not only the process of communication and the process of getting that out. We've had parent comments that they appreciate what we're doing and bringing awareness and focusing on it. We will continue to do that, but it's also a saying that goes back to what gets inspected gets respected. So it's our job to make sure that we are inspecting our dress code and making sure it is operating the way we need it to. We have some work to do on it, and we will do that. So just wanted to close with that and go on the record to say I did not wear pajama pants to college.
Thank you, Dr. Crotto. Were you in a suit and tie?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Thank you. We will move on to item H1. Dr. Crotto.
Thank you, Madam President. We have some Exciting appointments tonight. Great presentations. Now we're on to the exciting appointments, and Dr. Poling will lead us through the recommendation for Director of Finance.
Thank you, Dr. Croto. Madam President, members of the board, administration is proud to recommend a position of Director of Finance to Francie Wolf-Baumann for the assignment in the 23-24 school year. She is a bachelor's in science and hotel and restaurant management from Northern Arizona University. She has extensive educational experience, including being in Dysart since 2008, and she's currently our accounting coordinator. She will receive a salary and benefits commensurate with the position, her education, and experience. Her resume is attached for board review, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Poling. Do we have any questions? Okay. I move that we approve the appointment of Francie Wolf-Baumann, Baumann, thank you, as Director of Finance.
Second.
Motion made by Crystal Chaffin, seconded by Dawn Densmore. Congratulations. Next, we will move on to item H2. Dr. Croto?
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we continue with our recommendation for an interim elementary school principal, and Dr. Poling will continue with this item.
Thank you, Dr. Croto. Madam President, members of the board, administration is recommending the addition of an interim elementary school principal position in order to provide appropriate coverage. Additionally, administration is recommending the appointment of Rick Haney to fill the interim position for the remainder of the 23-24 school year at El Mirage Elementary School. He is currently the assistant principal there, and actually he's been in Dysart even longer, since 2004, and he will receive salary and benefits commensurate with his position, education, and experience. His resume is attached for board review. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Haney, will you also dye your hair fun colors?
As long as it fits dress code.
That's good.
I don't want to wear an orange shirt for the presentation.
That's funny.
Thank you. Thus, I will move to approve the addition of interim elementary school principal position and appointment of Rick Haney as interim elementary school principal for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year. Motion made by Crystal Chaffin, seconded by Christine Pritchard. Motion carries.
Let's give him a congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. We will move on to H3.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, last board meeting, you established an interim principal at Willow Canyon, therefore opening a spot for an assistant principal. And tonight we're here for a recommendation to fill that interim assistant principal, and Dr. Poling will take us through that.
Thank you, Dr. Croto. Madam President, members of the board, administration is recommending the addition of an interim high school assistant principal in order to provide appropriate coverage. Additionally, administration is recommending the appointment of Tim Madrid to fill the interim position for the remainder of the 23-24 school year at Willow Canyon High School. Tim Madrid has extensive administrative experience and recently retired as a longtime principal in Towson Union High School District. He will participate in the phased retirement program and will be employed by ESI. He will receive salary commensurate with the position, his experience, and education. His resume is also attached for board review. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Poling. Any questions? Okay, I move to approve the addition of an interim high school assistant principal position and appointment of Tim Madrid as interim high school assistant principal for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year.
Second.
Motion made by Crystal Chaffin, seconded by Dawn Densmore.
Let's give him a congratulations.
Motion carries. Next, we will move on to H4, Dr. Croto.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, I bring to you an opportunity to talk about safety some more and increase our safety footprint across the district. This district has been very focused on school safety, as you've seen in our presentations, along with conversations we've had in executive session about school safety. We continue to be focused. I can tell you, to date, it's 6 days in, every school have an audit on their safety procedures. And we've done a spectacular job of going out and doing that with cabinet. Obviously, Mr. Yeager and Mr. Kashat have done a great job. But we continue to have more and more placed on school safety. So tonight I bring to you a recommendation of adding a position to our safety. Right now it's one person doing all the audits, doing all the safety checks, running all the processes, and it's becoming a lot for one person to do all those things and be very effective. So tonight I bring to you an opportunity to add a Director of Safety Operations job description to you for approval. This will basically create a safety and security department within our district. That director will run the safety and security of the district and all the resources available that go into that. I feel it's very important. It's really on the forefront of safety. I don't think you see that in a lot of districts right now, but we do have 13 SROs. We have security guards. We're asking to do audits, safety checks. They go monitor drills. And to do all that, I think we need to expand our footprint and do it even more effectively than we're already doing. They're doing an amazing job, but as you know and as you've seen, there's a lot to it, and to continue to focus on it, I think is very important, because we know that without safety, if our kids don't feel safe and our parents don't feel safe, that learning is not going to occur, first and foremost. It is the first and foremost thing. It is on everybody's mind, and it's that important. So tonight I ask you for the approval of a Director of Safety Operations and to the district. So I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Just a comment. I have spoken with a lot of other board members and also other district employees from outside of our district. And to Dr. Croto's point, I think everyone is taking safety very seriously, but in my opinion, I don't think anyone is taking it to the level that Dysart has and is looking to grow even further. And I'm just truly grateful for the focus on safety from Dr. Croto and all of Cabinet. And I'm truly grateful to see this, and thank you.
You're welcome.
So would this, in essence, kind of create its own department? We have our own safety department. I feel like right now it's kind of part of the student services. Would this create its own entity?
Madam
almost?
President, that is correct. It creates its own entity, so you'll have a safety and security department with this Director of Safety Operations running that department. So in essence, it will become a department right now of 2, and it will still fall under Mr. Musey as overseeing the department.
I think that's incredible. Mm-hmm. Having our own safety and security department, it's very helpful because, as Ms. Dunsmore stated, safety is at the forefront of everybody's mind. And we want our community to know that we are committed to our student and our staff safety. So with that, any other questions?
Yep. So right now, the Director of Student Services is involved in the safety piece, correct? Because when I first saw this, I was thinking, and I've been worried about this for a while, not that he said anything about it, but I just worry for him. I don't want to burn out Mr. Yeager. Like, we don't want to lose him. And I want to make sure he feels supported as well. So initially I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have this other person too, but then we're taking, Director of Student Services, are they going to still have any hand in this, where they're going to be able to help support at least until they're off and running? Otherwise, it's still just going to be a two-man show again.
Madam President, Member Pritchard, absolutely. They work hand in hand. They will continue to work hand in hand, as well as the expectation is safety is not just a two-person department. Safety is everybody's job in this district. To cabinet, to our teachers, to our administrators, it is everybody's job to make sure this campus is safe. So my expectation is that everybody works hand in hand. If they need help inspecting, if they're checking doors, if they're doing those things, everybody does that. It's not just leaving on these two people, but they will still work with Mr. Kashat hand in hand because he does a lot of the student discipline and the behaviors. So that naturally intertwines, and they're both report to Mr. Musey. So it's a perfect matchup.
Okay, because I mean, I get what you're saying. Of course, it takes everybody, but what I'm really talking about is the day-to-day workload of those audits and all the things that do just fall on Mr. Yeager and Kashat. So they're still gonna have that piece.
Yes, ma'am.
They're gonna feel the additional support basically by adding this position.
Yes, ma'am, they will.
All right, thank you.
Questions, comments? Okay. I move to approve the department restructure plan as presented. Second. Motion made by Crystal Chapin, seconded by Christine Pritchard. Motion carries. We will move on to I-1. Do we have any requests for future agenda items?
I do.
Okay, Ms. Grant?
I'm not sure, excuse me, necessarily a huge presentation, but we're at the beginning of school year, and I'd like to know how many teachers we currently have on staff. I'd like to know how many vacancies we have by grade and by subject matter, please.
Madam President, Member Grant, that will be at the next meeting. It is scheduled, and we will make sure it's by grade and subject matter as requested, but it is scheduled for next meeting.
Especially the high school level. I mean, that's more so, or the middle school. But, and I know it's a moving target, and things change very quickly. He'll be hiring 5 more between now and then, but just an idea of where we stand on vacancies, mostly the vacancies, please.
You got it. Easily done.
I just want to clarify because maybe I might want to add something to it. So when you say the vacancies for the teachers, could we maybe get it just for all, staff? Like what our vacancy rates are for all the categories?
Absolutely. You want support staff, everything,
Right.
administration, support staff. That is easily done. We will include that in the report, as well as our student enrollment and those things. That's coming in the report next.
Great.
Bus drivers will be in there. We're really solid since we made those moves, but it's coming up. That is scheduled for the next meeting already.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Item J1, I move to adjourn. Motion made by Crystal Chapin, seconded by Joe Grant.
I'm going to vote no. No. I'm going to vote yes. I know. Did you vote no?
I was going to if you did.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.